The most simple additions to a game can create a feeling and nostalgia for players that is unmatched. But at what point does simple additions turn into a complicated mess of a game? Fortnite has added a lot of additions to the game. Collaborations, new movement changes, new weapon changes. You would think this is a good thing, right? Before diving deep into all of this, we need to find out why the game was so simple before and why it seems like such a mess now. I want you to think whenever you first loaded Fortnite. It could have been the day of its release, or it could have been Chapter 5. Think about that time though. What did everything look like? Was it simplistic? Was there very good players in the game every time you booted up the game? Was the movement simple? Well, I'm gonna go back to whenever I first started, the day of its release. Whenever I played during this time, I remember it was very simplistic. Everyone seemed terrible at the game compared to now, but looking back on it, it seemed so hard to win a game. I actually didn't win my first solo game until about Season 4, Chapter 1, and I remember if you got a 20 kill game, you were making headlines on YouTube and YouTubers were posting about you, especially if you did it in solo squads or solo duos. In my video, Why Was OG Fortnite So Perfect?, I talked about not even knowing how to get a gun. I had to look up online how to get a gun in Fortnite because the game was so new and the genre of Battle Royale was just also super new. And if you look at footage from back then, the scenery was just amazing. It changed and it could be different every single game. It could be morning time, daytime, or nighttime, but it had an aesthetic that is polar opposite to how it is today. I'm actually taking an art class in college, and coincidentally enough, I had a test on aesthetics and how everything could just be compiled into one. I actually took this test before recording this video, and it made me think Fortnite doesn't have an aesthetic anymore. If you look back, Fortnite had a cartoonish style and graphic style that really isn't competitive to how it is today. Today, we have more realism in the game rather than the game's core values, which is a cartoonish style game. And whenever I took this test, I just had an aha moment. I realized this is majority of the reason why the game is such a mess today. It seems like today everything is just thrown into the game, especially with collaborations. There's no aesthetic and identity of the game. Now you may be saying, oh, well, they put Snoop Dogg in the game, put Ice Spice in the game, and Eminem, and I mean, it's sort of cool, yeah, but Fortnite isn't tied to their original aesthetic of the game, which is a cartoonish style game instead of realism. But back on the topic of OG Fortnite, during Chapter 1, I would say up until Season 5, there was a few collabs with Marvel, but it didn't take over the game. It was just a game mode. All you had to do was get the Thanos gauntlet, and there was nothing else really. There wasn't any skins up until later Chapter 1, but it felt uniform. Now that I'm looking back as well, everything in the game reflected upon each other. There was a reason to add something to the game. That means storyline, a skin. There was a true reason. Some of the skins were fun, yeah, but it had a reason and it had a style. All of them were cartoonish. Another thing I want to get into is the map. Now, if we look at the map before, there was a ton of little POIs that you could land at. Now, the reason why I'm mentioning this is a lot of people, when they're analyzing this, and other YouTubers, don't think outside of the box. If you think about it today, with Chapter 2 Remix, you'll notice that a lot of the players die out very, very fast. I think third zone, I had maybe 10 people in the game. And the reason why I'm saying this and bringing this up is because the old map had so many little POIs, and the game also felt like it lasted a lot longer. People didn't want to spend a ton of time landing and dying, opposed to today, when they could just go to simple POIs that had maybe 1 or 2 houses and could land there. I remember I landed next to Tilted Towers and Loot Lake. In the middle, there was a tiny little shack, and at this shack there was one chest and maybe a few items, but it got me through. There was also a little campsite next to it, But I was able to land here and get semi-good loot, and then be able to go and loot up a little bit later around the other smaller POIs, and so did a lot of players as well. There wasn't a real hot drop of the game, and this allowed for more players to end up in the end zone. For Chapter 6, if we really think about it, if we want this game to be perfect again, if we want it to have a high player base and everyone enjoying the game, and let me say this again, player base does not mean it's a good game. Yes, you could enjoy it, but just because Chapter 2 Remix is better than Chapter 5 doesn't mean that it is the best and amazing. Fortnite had its higher player count of 10 million people during the live event, but there's still a lot of complaining about this season. The only reason people are coming back is because it's the Chapter 2 map. The next thing I want to talk about is structure of the game. If you played during Chapter 1, you'll remember all of the events that would happen and had a tie to the storyline. First, we had the meteors popping up in the sky, teasing Season 4, and also the emergency broadcast system. This led up to the rocket event, Kevin the Cube, and so on. But the storyline had a structure and a purpose, opposed to now where Chapter 2 Remix has Snoop Dogg's agency and Ice Spice's Shark location, which is coming out later, along with Eminem's Grotto. But it was just thrown in there. There was no uniform or tie. It was just for money, and I can see that and understand it. It is a very cool addition, but it seemed like such a surprise that was so unnecessary and didn't have a real structure or uniformed story. Now, the next thing I want to get into as well is competitive. During Season 9 and Season 10, competitive had a real rise, and people were excited. It seems like they jumped from the storyline to competitive, most of the players, at least, that I remember. I didn't pay too much attention to the storyline, and I got truly, really into competitive. Now, understand, I wasn't good at all, but my skill increased a lot because I wanted to be like the big names such as Clicks, Tfue, Benji Fishy, Mongrel, Mr. Savage, you name it. I basically wanted to be them. And so did millions of other players. And Fortnite realized this. They updated it so the building felt a lot easier and smoother. It was more responsive. And overall, this is a good change for competitive. But is it a good change for the game overall? See, the main addition to building was not to rank 90s and do quadruple edits, but it was to build slight cover and to build forts so that you could kill people, hence the name Fortnite. And I know this may sound insane to say, but I think Fortnite needs to get rid of turbo building, especially for casual play. If you really think about it, if we didn't have turbo building, the original core values of bringing back building would be existent. And yes, you could say, well, what about the competitive players? Well, it could bring a new wave of competitive players on. If you think about it now, these top tier competitive players have already kind of made their money, and a lot of them are just enjoying the game. And I'm not gonna lie, I am one of these people that is good at the game. I don't think I have an ego saying that, but I can do quadruple edits pretty easily because I'm also zero ping and I have a really good computer. And even I'm agreeing that they should remove turbo building because it would just create a way more simple style of the game. Because before, during early Chapter 1, no one really knew how to build, so obviously it was a lot more fun to use. The next thing I want to go over is engine advancements. We went from Unreal Engine 3 for Fortnite Chapter 1 all the way to Unreal Engine 5, and it sounds like it's not a big step up, but it really is. I mean, if you look at the graphics from back then, it was a lot less realistic, it was more cartoony, but now the engine is very advanced and it seems a ton more realistic. Now, I'm not saying that Fortnite should go back to this engine, but what I'm saying is that they shouldn't utilize its full potential of the realism. This should just be in creative maps and shouldn't be in the Battle Royale game because it doesn't suit the cartoonish style of Battle Royale. And the people that like the realism are the people that are playing creative and all of these UEFN maps. A lot of YouTubers don't discuss this at all, and I'm pretty shocked because back in Unreal Engine 3 compared to Unreal Engine 5, it's just a huge step up. And yes, in hindsight, it sounds like it does make the game better, but it doesn't stick to its core values and the reason why players are actually playing the game. If Fortnite instead just stuck to a simplistic style, in the end, it would all work out for them. Now, I want to go on with my opinion. What should Fortnite do to make Chapter 6 as perfect as possible? And I'm not saying a game can be completely perfect, but we can still get very close to perfect if we try. There needs to be 3 base templates that they need to work on: graphics, gameplay style with building, movement, and gunplay, and target audience. So first, I want to go with the graphics. If we take a look from Fortnite Chapter 1 and their graphics up until now, you'll see that the sky and a lot of the houses, it seems too clear and easily visible. I think what Fortnite should do is kind of add a blur effect whenever you're away from a certain building. Kind of back in Chapter 1, it felt farther whenever you were looking out in the distance, and that made the map feel 100 times bigger. If they did this, I think that there would be a lot more players in the game, along with fights being a little bit harder long range. Also, they need to really take into detail the surroundings and the setting. Whenever Fortnite was in Chapter 1, they had a perfect color palette, and as I mentioned earlier, it had an aesthetic. If they stuck to the original sunsets, the cartoonish style, I think the game would thrive much more than you would think. Because, as I said at the beginning of the video, the most simple things can bring out the biggest changes in the game and how people's feelings adapt to it. Because right now, we just have a bland sky, a blue sky, and it does not feel as aesthetic, and also it doesn't feel like we would have any relevance later on to really look back and be like, wow, this game truly cared about their graphics, truly cared about their gameplay, and truly cared about their fan base. And next thing I want to go over is the gameplay. Now, a lot of y'all may not like this, but I think they should revert to the complete old movement. They can keep the visual style, but I was playing a map called Reload Royale, and it has all of the original movement. It seemed a lot harder, but at the same time, it was a lot more satisfying to win. And keep in mind, there's only 30 players in it usually, but I really enjoyed it just because it wasn't so complex. I even played on controller, even though I'm a keyboard and mouse player, just because I wanted that original feeling of how Fortnite felt before. Brand new and bare bones. I felt it a little bit tougher to build, and I think that's a good thing. It should be a little bit tougher to build. And I think if Fortnite did this and brought back the original core values and movement of the game, it would be just a very simple and enjoyable game. It doesn't need to be this complex. Another thing I want to go over too is gunplay. Now, the gunplay, right now we have hit scan again in Chapter 2 Remix, but we don't know if they're going to bring bullet drop back. Here's the thing, I think they should bring bullet drop back, and here's why. If they add the old movement back, along with the bullet drop, no sprinting, no mantling, no extra things to add to the game, I think the bullet drop would make the game a lot more competitive and a lot harder. Yes, they had hit scan before, and it's been in the game for 7 years, and I understand bullet drop was probably a test, but bullet drop with the original movement makes so much sense if you really think about it. And the last thing that I said, target audience. Who are the people that are playing Fortnite? Well, at this time, the age range is probably, 5 years old up until maybe 30, 35. A lot of the younger generation now is moving towards the creative maps, and a lot of the older audience is sticking with Battle Royale. So what they should think about is, let's target Battle Royale to an age range of maybe 15 and up, and 15 and lower needs to be targeted to the creative maps. And if they think of this, here's the thing, I think they're thinking too deep and overcomplicating it. And in reality, if you think about it, the reason Fortnite was so good at the beginning is because it wasn't complicated. And I understand now that there is a ton of new developers and there's a ton of new graphic artists there. But if they are watching this video, they should go on the old files, see how the game was, maybe play a match or two. All of Epic should do this. Play a match or two together, understand how the game worked prior, and play a game now. It is 2 completely different games and completely different metas overall. And I was talking to one of my friends about this earlier. I don't see any Epic players, or any Epic employees, playing the game. I never have seen a YouTube video. Yeah, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, but I've never seen an Epic employee have a YouTube channel and upload consistently on it. And if there is, please link them in the comments. I would like to know. But it seems like that they don't even play this game. back then we had I think his name was Epic Boomer. I think he played with Lachlan, and there was it played with a ton of streamers, but he actually understood the game. The developers actually understood the game and played it, rather to now where it seems like we don't even know if Epic employees are playing the game or not. We don't know who the developers are working on it. And I understand this for safety reasons, because back whenever they had the movement change, it was diabolical. The amount of hate that people sent on Twitter to this guy was just unnecessary, and even some threats, if you know what I'm talking about. But it was just so unnecessary. So I understand it's for privacy, but at the same time, if they created faceless YouTube channels and started uploading kind of gameplay videos of themselves, I think that they would get a lot more feedback, and the community would take it a lot better if we had a lot of these developers playing the game. And if I was the CEO of Epic Games, or if I was the one directing everything, I think what I would do is just do a lot more community polls, understand the core values of the game, and start the storyline from scratch in Chapter 6. I think that's the best thing that they could do. Anyways, it's been your boy Tricky. If you haven't already, use code TRICKYS, TRICKYS, in the Fortnite item shop. And after you do that, join my Discord, send a picture of you, sub to the channel, and you will be entered in my giveaway. Anyways, it's been your boy Tricky, and I'm out. Peace.